everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. I am so happy to be here with you, gang, and I'm apologizing for my voice today. You can kind of hear the nasally thing going on here. It is springtime in Montana. I've recently been traveling a whole bunch to the Bahamas, to Nashville to play and see my cousin and all kinds of things. And of course, whenever you ride on the germ tube, even though they put the HEPA filters in, you get sick. So I was sick. And then we come back around here and, oh my God, I live in an ag state, okay? So everything's blooming and grasses and wheat and, oh, Lord help me. So anyway, thank you very much for being patient with my weird sounding nose. And we are going to dive right in today. Dive right in with the fact that we're looking at the United States of America today, gang. What is in store for our country? Now, granted, we only have an hour here, so I'm going to go down a checklist. I've got all these angels queued up. It's like playing a pool game, you know, when you're like, crack, and all the balls fly into all these different corners, and it's pretty awesome. So here we go. You know, obviously right now we are in a recession. And I want you to think back to some other podcasts that talked about 2022 being the year of expansion. And this is actually weirdly going to be a fantastic financial year for individuals, although it's a rotten financial year for corporations. So we're going to start right there with money. Okay. So what does that even mean? What does that mean? Well, you know, if you look back at those 2022 podcasts, what's to come in our chain of podcasts here, you're going to see that these angels were showing us that this year really takes off from June forward, okay? So we're not quite there yet. And as we look at where we are, we look at our stock market, which is way, 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 way down. Now, for those of you that follow along at the dollar level of my Patreon, then, you know, well, actually everybody who listens to this podcast is on that dollar level. And I put out a message a while back, and I've just kind of been letting it rest. That's like, look, you know, this is the time if you have 10 spare dollars, 20 spare dollars, not a lot, you don't want to blow your wad, but just spare change. Now you can pick up stocks for spare change. I mean, there's a lot of great stocks that are going for 50 cents a stock right now. It's crazy. So also crypto prices are way, 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 way down. Now, a lot of people are freaking out. They're saying, oh my God, crypto's never going to return. That's crap. It totally is. Wait till 2024. It's going to blow your hair back. But anyway, I mean, so right now, everything is really, really inexpensive. And so if you are a crypto purchaser or you are a stock purchaser, you know, different cryptos, they're all going to go up. They'll buoy up together, right? As Bitcoin goes up, everything goes up. As Ethereum goes up, everything goes up. There's tokens like Polygon, the Matic, that are pretty cheap right now, that those things are going to double once this goes up. So, I mean, there's just goofiness out there. And like I said, stocks are way down, all the things. So why is it bad for corporations and great for individuals? Well, for just the reason I mentioned. Because if you do have 10 spare bucks in your pocket burning a hole in it, and you go on to say an app like, I don't know, First Trade or any of them, you know, Robinhood or whatever, and you get on there and you actually purchase some stock right now, that's going to double and triple and quadruple and do all kinds of things. So your 10 bucks could turn into $100 pretty easily. And again, I'm not talking throwing big chunks of money here. That's not how I roll. So basically, this is going to be good for individuals. Now, on a corporate level, they're eating crap right now. You know, they're having to go back to their shareholders and say, gee, there's a recession. We don't have any money. We're losing profits. Ergo, it looks like we're doing terribly in 2022 with the money situation. Individuals, however, will do well. Now, here's the other thing that's just kind of crazy in 2022 right now, in the first part of it. And we're almost to the middle. We're almost to that June marker, but we're not there yet. And what we're going to see here is that if you do have investments, gang, okay, it's going to take a minute for those investments to ramp up. Now, I'm going to conservatively say 6 months, but we're probably, or really a year more so. But really in about 6 months at the end of 2022, once we hit 2023, we're starting to see some changeovers with how our money markets start to buoy back up. So again, bad for corporations, great for individuals if you do have some kind of crypto or stock accounts or whatever. And I'm a huge fan of weird cryptos, like Cakecoin and Polydoge and all these weird things. And no, this is not financial advice. I'm just telling you my own journey, okay? And with those cryptos, you got to buy them through like Trust Wallet or an exchange or whatever. They're not on, Coinbase or anything like that. However, you can get those for fractions, literal fractions of a penny. They're so cheap right now. So you could take $50 and get a whole ton of those things. And when they buoy back up, which they will, they're going to take a little longer. But when they do, it's going to be quite something. So, really, it's good for the individual right now, and it is rough for the corporation. Yeah, you can see how that works out. Now, we do have people getting laid off because of the recession. So let's talk workforce. So we checked the money part off. We're going to go to workforce. The workforce portion of this gets a little sketchy because when we do have major corporate structures and those corporate structures are losing money, they lay people off. So from now till the end of 2022, we are going to have more layoffs. The tech sector is really sucking wind right now. And if you don't know what that is, that's just all the tech companies. And they're really struggling. They're having a really hard time. So the tech companies are kind of, they're kind of sunk into the mud right now. However, again, if you have a few spare dollars and you don't mind throwing them at stocks, it's a good time to pick some of the cheaper ones up. Now, what's interesting here is if we move into the workforce, okay, at the same time we have people getting laid off in jobs, we are also going to see certain sectors as we go from here to 2023 that are looking for greater opportunities to hire people because there's certain sectors that are booming while others, sectors shrink. And this is just kind of a natural thing, gang. You got to remember, for those of us that are over 25, and you can think back to the 1970s and the gas prices were going crazy and there was, the recession of the 80s. And I don't know, over 20 some odd years, 30 years, we kind of have a freak out financially. This one was brought on, of course, through COVID-19, and we're still feeling those ripples of COVID. This financial stuff and job market stuff is all COVID-19. And of course, yes, we've got Ukraine and we've got the war and Russia and all these things. And the United States, thank God, is throwing billions of dollars at that war, which is huge. And at the same time, we're throwing billions of dollars at the war. Our country's over here going, wow, our prices are going crazy. I know people here in Montana, their jaw is dropping because in Montana, now for some of you in other parts of the country, you're going to be like, whatever. But in Montana, the gas prices are up to $4.24 a gallon. And our average gas price, you guys, it hangs about $2.80, $2.90, $2.70. So for our region, our gas prices have doubled, which makes me furious, by the way, because we have 2 refineries within 15, 30 miles of my hometown, but they're only raising those prices because they can. And we'll get to the corporate greed in a minute. So basically what we're looking at is jobs. So certain sectors are going to be squeezing jobs out. Other sectors are going to be hiring like crazy. So if you're somebody who gets laid off, okay, try not to freak out. Go through your feelings, feel your feelings, have your freak out about it, yet get yourself into a different headspace to try something new for a while. If you have a long-term career and it phases out on you, okay, don't worry about coming back around and being able to resaddle in that career if you do something else for a while. And this is also the universe's way of spreading brilliance around, gang. It is. If you think about it, the universe really, really wants us to do well. And sometimes we kind of get pigeonholed in on what we do for a living because why wouldn't we? We've been doing the same thing forever. And the universe is trying to get us to spread out our genius. That's what's trying to happen right now, too. So maybe you've been in a tech field, just say, for a really long time, and that tech field lays you off temporarily, and maybe you go and do something else. Maybe you go work in a nonprofit sector or whatever, because maybe you're a coding person or something, and they really need some back-end help. And you get to see a whole different approach to the world through what you do. So they said that which is the distribution of all gifts and talents. That's the angel who walks with the world, okay? So we're going to have like a little spread around. And if you're listening, don't panic. I'm not saying you're absolutely going to get laid off. I'm just saying that if you do, there's a larger design to it. Have some fun. Good Lord, go dink around for 5 minutes serving coffee someplace. Go work at a Starbucks. Go work at a local coffee hub with all the tattooed and pierced people, you know? I mean, spread your genius. Learn from those folks. They can learn from you. This is a time frame of crossing over boundaries. You know, in America, we like to put ourselves in these sociological little pockets. You know, we pocket ourselves by socioeconomic bracket. We pocket ourselves by who we partner with, what gender of that individual happens to be. We pocket ourselves in ethnicities. We pocket ourselves with skin color. We do all kinds of categorizing here in the USA. And it's pretty human to do that, right? Yet what I tell you is this is a time frame where the universe is literally asking us to step outside of our comfort level so that we can learn from others and be teachers and also be students. We are here to teach others. We're here to learn as well. Okay? And we're here to learn from everybody. Even people you'd be like, there's nothing at all that human being could possibly tell me that I think could have value. Well, actually, that's not true. All of us have value on some level, and we're here to learn something, and we're here to teach something. So don't freak out if your industry gets hit. Rotate temporarily, and I do say temporarily because this angel is showing me that we're going to have so much opportunity here, so much opportunity to get back into the saddle in our jobs and all the things. Yet right now, it is very important for us to see life in other people's shoes. That's very important for all of us. So just, keep that in mind as you go forward. So job-wise, it's going to look a little wonky and weird. At the same time, there's a bunch of other weird jobs opening up. Now, there's a lot of people out there, and I can't say I would necessarily even be immune to what I'm about to say, that maybe make a decent paycheck, just a good, solid, middle-class living, and to go work a service job, you're going to work pretty hard, and you're not going to make the money you were making. And I don't think there's many of us that would be immune to saying, I'm not going to do that job for that money. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Yet even if you do it temporarily, look at it as an adventure, as a walkabout in a different way of being present in our country as our country tries to build itself back up again. And I'm not suggesting we all have to go be, ditch all our careers and go work in a coffee shop 24/7, unless that super makes you happy, in which case, oh my God, please do that. And we're seeing a lot of that with the Great Resignation that we see. And we've seen the Great Resignation, people quitting their jobs permanently because they're sick of the corporate garbage. And people are opening up coffee shops, or they're going to be a server at the super cool neighborhood cafe truck stop where all the cool people hang out and you get to see your regulars, and pretty much all the stress on you that whole day is get hash browns out to table number 4, So there's a lot that's being asked of us. And again, learning to see joy rather than limitation, learning to see opportunity rather than lack. These are a lot of the lessons that we're being shown right now. So don't be afraid to champion those lessons if you temporarily have to take a detour in your career path. And you might just decide that, you know what, you kind of like the new detour better. I mean, how many times have you been like, I should really quit this crappy job, but I don't have anything else? And we're American. We're like, I don't have any energy to do anything. I'm going to go home and watch This Is Us. Our motivation to get up off the blocks is not super high in the United States. And I've talked for years on this podcast about the fact that in our consumerist nation, we have literally been groomed to be battery packs for a giant machine. We are groomed to be literally fueling our bodies with poor nutrition so our brain doesn't work properly. We are groomed to stay in one spot and stare at a TV show, and to be programming, it's called, because they're programming us. I mean, we are groomed to go to our worker bee thing and come home and crash and then show up and be the battery pack all over again. And if we can find a job and a career in this lifetime that we love, then that is super, super exciting. At that point, we have this opportunity to be like, wow, this is really excellent. And so it's so fascinating to me to watch how in America we're groomed to kind of be couch potatoes and to just show up and work for the man. Yet now we've got the Great Resignation happening. People are trying different careers on. So don't beat yourself up if you don't feel like you have a ton of energy right now to go find another job. That's also collective grief, gang. We don't talk about what COVID did to the world or did to the United States. We still have collective grief in this nation over watching our nation's capital get overrun by some seriously disturbed people on January 6th. I mean, there's a lot of grief here on what's been happening openly in this country since really 2016, 2017. And people can blame whoever they want for that. They can blame Trump or they can blame Biden for where we're at right now. And I just read this poll out. And of course, the news, my God, I'm tired. I work in media and I get sick of media, you guys. Honest to God, the newspaper was ranking on Biden and talking about how Democrats are over him and Republicans are over him and it's his lowest ratings yet and blah, 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 blah. And what frustrates me about that is the news just reports on the first 1/4 inch deep of the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that goes several miles down to the Mariana Trench. That's the newspaper. That's the news. Here's my one little tiny fact I'm going to bang the gong on. Now, it is true. Biden's approval ratings are in the toilet, and a lot of people are freaking out. But what the hell is that guy going to do? I mean, can you imagine trying to be president in the post-Trump era? I mean, basically, Trump got in there, and it's his style, and he partied it up and acted like nobody needed to pay for anything, and all of that deficit. He ran the deficit up so huge, and it rolled on to old Biden. And I mean, love me my Joe Biden, but my God, the guy, I mean, one of the funniest things I've ever heard, ever, is I was watching Death to 2020. And if you have not watched, I think it's on Netflix, Death to 2020, oh my God, you are missing out on a little nugget of joy just hiding in binary code in your streaming service, okay? You have got to watch Death to 2020, and then you've got to watch Death to 2021, okay? But in Death to 2020, they're talking about what a crappy year it was and how weird. And it's a comedy. It's a dark mockumentary. It's hilarious. And one of the funniest things I ever did here was, they're panning on everybody. They're panning on Trump. They're panning on Biden. It's kind of like South Park, Death to 2020. Like South Park, nobody gets a pass in South Park. Everybody gets made fun of in South Park. You guys, hey, you guys, I hate you guys. It's seriously. So one of the funniest things on Death to 2020 is they're talking about Joe Biden. God, poor Joe. God bless you, Joe. And they're showing him walking somewhere. And they said, they're talking about coming right out of a sentence where they were talking about former President Trump. And they're describing former President Trump. And they said, former president and pig person Donald Trump is running up against veteran of the Civil War, Joe Biden. And I literally, oh my God, I laughed so hard. Poor Joe Biden. Anyway, when we talk about the news, we talk about approval ratings, a lot of the, boo Biden stuff, it has to do with the economy. And the economy, of course, we're catching 2 years after COVID-19. And 2021, you'll probably notice, was a really rough financial year. And the first part of 2022, even though it's the year of expansion, and it is going to be a great financial year for people individually, we also see a lot of personal building, like people are going to be building onto their homes, their greenhouses, their living spaces, new outcropping cabins, lots of moving in 2022. Even though we see that on a personal level, it makes the economy rougher, right? So when we're talking about jobs, we're talking about all the things, Just remember that any news source, and even if it's panning the guy you love or if it's panning the guy you hate, news hyper focuses on one little thing. And the truth is Biden's approval level is way low because everybody is so tired of dealing with the COVID repercussions. Yet the reality of the COVID repercussions is they're just going to keep coming until they're not coming anymore. And 2020, we were buoyed by a lot of, it wasn't fake money, but it was kind of fake money from the government. And then 2021 came and that cut off. And that was the start of the fumbling of the ball. And a lot of small businesses in Montana, I can tell you, closed in 2021. So here we are almost halfway through 2022, and we're feeling the repercussions of those 2 years, right? So job-wise, our market's going to shift a little bit, and we're going to kind of turn around and try to do what we can. And if you do find yourself in a position to do something temporarily different, it really is because the universe is trying to spread brilliance around temporarily. You will go back to your job. Our market's going to open back up again. It's taken a pause right now because it has to. Things are pretty intense. So let's talk about the inflation. The inflation. Let's talk about that. Okay, so what the angels are showing me about that is that it's just going to keep rocking and rolling, everybody. As long as we keep paying for it, America, they're going to keep raising the prices. I was just ranking on oil prices, gas prices, which, by the way, in case you're listening, is no president's fault. Okay? Not Trump's fault, not Biden's fault. It's not even God's fault. You can talk to OPEC if you want gas price resolution. And what makes me mad about the gas prices is, like I said, 15 miles from my house, I have a Conoco refinery. That gasoline is getting pumped in from Wyoming. It's just getting sucked in from Wyoming with the oil. They make it into gas over there, and it gets trucked right over to my corner gas station over here, 2 blocks from my house. So no, our gasoline in Montana, at least where I am, is not coming in from a foreign country. A majority of the United States gas stores do not come from a foreign country. So if you're somebody listening thinking that, the Biden administration is stopping drilling, that's not actually true. There's a lot of permits sitting on the table that these oil companies haven't even applied for. So there's a lot more to it than we think. But it's easy to blame a president. It's easy to say, yay, Trump made good gas prices and Biden made bad gas prices. That's about as far as we can go as Americans in terms of critical thinking these days, which is a much bigger problem, and that's a whole other podcast that's scheduled here. However, our critical thinking processes are a little in the toilet. Please reference the portion of the podcast earlier where nutrition and the prefrontal cortex was brought into focus. Continue on with your broadcast. So, in essence, we're just dealing with a lot in 2022, okay? And so corporate greed is a big deal. And we've got a lot of corporations that are taking advantage of actual supply chain hiccups and issues and all these other things and just jacking their prices up. And like I said, the oil industry is definitely doing that. And our gas prices just keep soaring here in Montana, even though, again, they're getting pumped out of the same wells down in Wyoming and just piped up here to southern Montana and being made into oil and trucked right over to my gas station. And our oil over here has zero to do with any of the world issues, any of the global issues. However, all oil companies are allowed to raise their oil prices if OPEC raises theirs. So you're not required to, by the way. I could be Joe Blow's oil company. I could be Danielle's gas. And I could decide that, I could decide to sell my gas for $1.99 a gallon. And I'd probably still be making a hell of a profit because everybody would be buying my gas right now. And that's true. They raise it because they can. And we're seeing a lot of that going around. Now, there are other industries that are legitimately, gang, in 2022 going into 2023 that are legitimately hosed. You're going to watch your beef prices soar because grain prices have gone crazy. Corn prices have gone nuts. It's harder to find food for the beef because a lot of the food is affected by drought. So there's a lot happening here that is causing a compounded effect. A lot of what we're seeing, though, is just inflated pricing. Now, some of the inflated pricing we're also seeing is in transportation, because remember, fuel costs have gone through the roof because oil companies are notoriously greedy. They have a saying about this. They shoot up like a rocket and they float down like a feather. Like they go up real fast and it takes forever to get them down. Check that out. It's a thing. So this is a well-known fact that oil companies manipulate the system like this. Well, when our fuel prices are high, those costs get, we've got to truck our Amazon goods out to people like me in Timbuktu out there. So, although I really never order from Amazon, can I tell you? Yeah, I'm not a fan of Amazon. I'm trying to break my child from ordering everything from Amazon now that my kid has a driver's license and can actually go buy things at a store. I'm like, please stop ordering from Amazon. And my kid's like, why? It's cheaper. I'm like, it's not always cheaper, kid, because you're paying for shipping, okay? And it's kind of bad for the environment because why don't you go buy this stuff that's already been trucked in here to Montana? And some stuff my kid can't find. In fairness, they look for stuff and they can't find it, and so fine. Anyway, I digress. So the point being is that, yes, we're going to see corporate greed just roll onward, and the corporate greed is going to continue to roll onward all the way out to 2024. No lie. And pretty soon we're going to price ourselves out of even being able to live here in the United States of America. Now, I do think this is interesting because it brings us to the point of employment issues kind of again, in that a lot of people that I've spoken with, I have a lot of clients. I'm so blessed by each and every one of you out there, you guys. I'm not even kidding. I have a lot of clients, and over the last 18 years now, I've been doing this job. And a lot of my clients have been with me a long time. And they've gone through their 40s and their 50s, and now they're retiring. And I have a significant amount of clientele, gang, who are leaving the United States to retire. I'm not even kidding. I have a lot of folks going to Mexico, going to Ecuador, going to Guadalajara, going to Belize, going to Portugal, going to Costa Rica, going to Panama. A lot of people are finding themselves in a position where they just cannot sustain themselves in the United States. So if you are doing okay and your bills are paid and you're paying on your own home, and I always say you own your own home, but we don't really own it. The bank does till we're done paying. But hey, man, if you have a deed on your house and you're paying on it, okay, if you bought your house, let's put it to you that way. If you own your own home and you have a place to be and you have a well in your yard that you could at least boil the water out of, you're going to be doing okay. For folks who are renting, this is going to be a tougher haul. And my wife, myself, my family rents this wonderful house that we're in. And we moved around a lot. I move around a lot for media. And that's all fine because if the roof goes to hell, you call the management company. That's fantastic. Yet we are just super hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that while this corporate greed phase is going on, which is huge, which we're going to talk about housing, while this is all going, that when our lease comes up, because we basically did like a 4-year lease on our house during the time that our kid was in high school, because we wanted them to be able to graduate and get out there and not have to worry about, moving again. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed that at the end of our lease period, that our rent doesn't double. Now, I think in the state of Montana, they can't just skyrocket your rent. I think they incrementally can ceiling it. I don't think they can just triple your rent, but they might be able to because we have a crazy Congress here. We have what I like to call the Handmaid's Tale Congress in Montana this last election cycle. And it's a bunch of people banding together to pass these national mandates that are authored by really weird religious think tanks in Virginia. I kid you not. That's what's happening in a lot of, quote, red states. And I digress, but Montana is not a red state, you guys. It's actually a purple state, and I'm so tired of people calling it a red state. It's not a red state. It's a purple state. But we have some really extremist people in our state-level Congress right now, so that's a problem. Anyway, housing. So the corporate greed is extending over to the housing market, and I'm sure you've seen housing just take off and go crazy. Now, if you've had a reading with me over the last year or the last couple of years. And I've said, just get into real estate. It's going to be great. Hang on to your housing. Now is not a super good time to buy because the housing prices are so beyond inflated. The only places I'm seeing that are great to buy homes are areas that haven't boomed yet. Like you can go to St. Louis. St. Louis has some incredible properties that are gorgeous, and you can still get them for under $200,000. 4-bedroom places that are brick and amazing, and oh my God. St. Louis is awesome. There's other places. Ohio's got some spaces like that. There are certain parts in the center portion of the country that are still really, really open to boom, and you can still find homes. So what we're seeing is a migration of people out of areas that are experiencing drought and are experiencing, really strange legislation that's making it difficult to really move commerce. And some of that legislation is necessary and some of it's kind of overkill as far as I'm concerned. Honestly, it just gets rough. It gets really rough. And if you look at a state like California, a lot of people have left California and moved to Montana. Now they sold their houses for a premium in California. They're able to come to Montana and buy a gazillion-dollar great house for, before. Now it's getting really expensive to live here. Now the housing prices are starting to level up here, unfortunately. However, they used to be able to come and buy this fantastic house and then bank $3 million and just kind of retire for a few years and hang out. So Montana's being purchased by people fleeing off the coast. Well, what that's doing is it's driving our local housing market. And I'm using us as an example, but I know this is happening all over the country. I talked to a guy in Florida where it was happening. It's happening all over, where folks who already had big dollar amounts in their homes sell the homes and go somewhere else, buy another house. And the local populations that are absorbing the folks who are moving are jacking up the house prices. So in Montana used to be one of the most affordable places to live, except for maybe one or two places. And now Montana is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Please don't even think of coming here. You will get so ripped off if you buy a house right now. And I know it may seem like it's cheaper. The house may seem cheaper than the $5 million home you sold. But if you buy a $700,000 3-bedroom house in Bozeman, Montana right now, or a $1.5 million 3-bedroom house in Bozeman, Montana, when this housing market pops, and it's going to in about 18 months, 2 years maybe, when it pops, that house in Bozeman is actually worth, if it's 3 bedrooms, a nice one, it might be worth $310,000 in a regular Montana market, okay? So even if you have a ton of money and you want to move here, don't be buying property here right now. That's like a super bad idea. Do what you want if you have a ton of money. But I'm telling you as a Montanan, you're buying something that's going to lose over half its value overnight. And that's going to be it. So if you don't mind losing $300,000 and that's not a big deal to you, go buy that house in Bozeman. Rock on, man. That's awesome. So with the housing markets the way that they are, what we're seeing with the corporate greed aspect is that there are huge corporations coming in and buying up huge swaths of homes and putting in really rinky-dink cheap updates in the houses and then renting them out for unbelievable amounts of money. Now, we're seeing this all over the country right now. So we're just going to keep our little fingers crossed, my wife and I, that, they're not going to do that to us. I don't think they will. We have a very wonderful management company here in Billings. So I'm hoping they won't do that. Yet, it's a reality that these homes are just getting, the rents are just skyrocketing. Also, what's happening is that people are, when these corporate entities roll into town, people are being offered huge amounts of money for their homes that then get purchased and turned into an Airbnb. So what we're going to see, because of the corporate greed grabbing the property and this unchecked just skyrocketing of home prices, which is, again, do what you want. It's your money. But if you buy in Montana right now, oh my God, unless you're buying in the eastern part of the state or some little spots that very few people even know about, you're throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars down a rabbit hole when this bubble pops. Just know that. So, when we look at this, and we look at where people are going to live, this begins to pose a giant problem. So now we're going to talk about some destabilizing issues in 2022's year of expansion. So let's say God, knock on wood that this is not true, but let's say all of a sudden, oh gosh, I got to find a place to live, and I'm hustling to find that, and everywhere else I go to move is super jacked up in their rent, so oh my God, and it's a big deal. I just got done saying that this was a great year financially for individuals, but poor for corporations. Well, that's going to temporarily impact my bank account, right? If I've got to hustle and move like that. The thing I would tell you, however, is that the entire market in about 2 years is going to shift. So if you're wanting to sell a home right now, now's a really good time. And I've had people saying, oh, I don't want to sell it now. It might go up higher. It might go up higher. It might go up higher. Here's the deal, man. You're going to want to sell your house now rather than being too close to the turnover of when this starts plummeting back down again. And it's going to. It's going to be very difficult to get a home loan. Interest rates are going to fly through the roof. I mean, I don't know who the United States thinks they're selling to. Do you ever think about that? Like, who the hell are these people selling to? I think it's amazing. I really do. I don't have one jealous bone in my body about this. I have amaze bones. I think it's amazing that there are people out there who can pay cash for a house up to $2 million. It's cash. I am amazed by that. And if you're that person, God dang it, good for you. You've done a really good job. You should feel amazing about yourself. For those of us that are not in that same position, I look at that and I think, wow, most people in the United States are not in that amazing position. And again, sincerely, from my heart to yours, congratulations. You've done well if that's you. I will tell you that most people are living below the poverty line in America. I mean, if you look at the statistics, most people in the United States are well below the poverty line. And we have families who are working. Each parent is working 2 and 3 jobs, and that person with 2 or 3 jobs is only bringing in $40,000 or $45,000 a year after taxes. So you've got a cumulative group making $90,000 a year. And if you do support a family, I mean, even a family of 3 on $100,000 a year, at least in a place like Montana where everything is skyrocketed in price, and that's everywhere now. I mean, you might as well be living on 50 grand. It's like, as we make more money, all the prices range. So that we make more money and all the prices raise. I mean, it's to the point where in 2022, what's expanding, the year of expansion, okay, is also greed. It's not just puffy stuff. It's not just happy stuff that expands. Greed is expanding. And it's expanding so fast. Oh my God, we're just watching it skyrocket and skyrocket. And what's happening is that the powers that be know. They know, you guys. The Fed knows. The people who analyze statistics and money flow in the United States and work in our government and work in our money systems, they know that a majority of our country is really at poverty level, okay? They know. You know how they know? Because they do our taxes. Gang, the IRS knows what everybody's numbers are. And of course, you do your taxes, you legally write off every single thing you can, all those things. Yet, even that being said, there are people who just, they're working in their W-2s. They already have money taken out for taxes. Not everybody has a fancy accountant. Sometimes you just do your TurboTax because you got a W-2. And you get your little refund. It could be $9. My kid got their first refund for $9. Isn't that cute? But, my kid works really hard. They work so hard. So $9, okay, $9. But, I remember working a regular job back in the day. And I get my W-2. I was a floral designer, actually. And man, I was so excited. I got $700 back in a tax return. And I, honest to God, thought I was rich. In 1994, I was pretty sure I was rich because I had $700, man. And $700 went a lot farther in 1994, as you'll recall. So the people who run the show, gang, they are all very aware that we are not a very financially solvent nation. And so the year of expansion, we're expanding on greed. And wherever your consciousness is right now, it's going to expand. Remember, I talked about that in 2021. I said, watch where you put your consciousness, because it's going to blow up in 2022. So let's shift over just a little bit to sociological issues. We're staring down the barrel of Roe versus Wade being overturned. And I got to snooping around in the psychic ethers about who the hell would out a justice's draft decision. And it was a person who really, really felt like the justices were going to kind of do whatever they wanted in spite of the law, or even in spite of the will of the nation. And the person who leaked this information, I just peeked into I didn't peek into who they were. I peeked into why the information was leaked. And the information was leaked because this individual has really big concerns over the court being not just heavily politicized, but basically not upholding the law, yet be really just pushing agendas of the people that paid for them to get there. And so this individual kind of thought that the American people should know that this court was going to act in a way that was really was against a majority of the country's will. When same-sex marriage was passed in, God, what was it, 2014 or whatever, when it was passed, a majority of the nation was for it. And there's really no reason why a legally consenting adult cannot marry another legally consenting adult. We do not have to define who that person is for that person. However, when we're looking at Roe versus Wade, again, the person who leaked that was aware that there was a particular agenda here that does not serve the United States. It does not serve where the country's headed. It serves a specific really agenda. And whether a person believes that a person should have an abortion or not, all those things, just like we don't decide who owns a gun. I mean, there's a lot of states that have even taken away permitting processes. I don't even think we have one anymore in Montana. I mean, honestly, I think you can just go buy a gun here, and I might be wrong, but I know that they no longer have conceal and carry permits. You can just carry a gun here. I can walk into a church. I can walk onto a college campus with a gun stuck down in my boot, and it's illegal. I don't even own a gun. But if I did, I could, because I live in Montucky, and boy, that's how we roll out here lately for whatever reason. So, I mean, you're arming your masses by doing that. You take away gun restrictions, and I know a lot of people, a lot of Democrats, a lot of lefties who own firearms and they hunt. So this idea that people on the left don't have guns, well, that's not true. That's just not true. I have a dear, dear friend. He's a brother from another mother, my friend Roy Pack. He's such a freaking character. And Roy and I co-owned a record label together in about 2012, 2013 timeframe. And Roy plays a mean set of congas. He's really good. And I used to have him sit in with me when I would play music shows, especially when we played for the label, because obviously we were both there for the label business. So, why not drink tequila and get up and throw a show? I mean, that's the best part about owning a record label is playing, and having fun. So we were up there playing, and I looked at his drum case. He had this big case where all of the drum equipment is kept. They call them drum coffins. And he had this big case, and on it were tons of stickers, and a big, huge bumper sticker at the bottom said, "Gun-toting Wyoming Democrat." And I started laughing. I thought, oh my God, that would just shock everybody, because we're all so polarized right now, right? Like, people on the left only hug trees. People on the right are racist and have AK-47s in their backyard. I mean, it's so stupid. We've gotten so stupid with our ideas of people and all the things. So I did see a very funny meme, though. I have to share it with you, speaking of guns. talking about Roe versus Wade. And there was this 1950s looking housewife holding a clipboard kind of thing. And on the clipboard was written, "If my vagina shot bullets, you would leave it alone," which I thought was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, that's probably true. Anyway, so when we're looking at Roe versus Wade, when we're looking at the sociological aspect of the year of expansion, wherever we put our thought process expands, right? Now you have to remember that there has been a group of people that have been I'm not even going to call them conservatives, because I say this all the time and I mean it. I think it's sort of insulting to a lot of my conservative friends to call these same Handmaid's Tale religious over the top zealot folks Republicans. If I were going to infiltrate, I would infiltrate a pre-existing group that might maybe share part of my ideology, but I sure wouldn't take on my own identity. I would try to infiltrate the group that's already established and try to take over that group from within, and that way nobody ever sees my actual face, right? They're going to blame the elephant. They're going to blame the Republican, and they're not actually going to see me back here. I mean, that's a classic art of war trick, you guys. Come on. So we've got this Handmaid's Tale zealot people that have really been working since the 1950s to infiltrate government. Now, this is not a conspiracy. It's documented. I mean, you can go back to Lyndon B. Johnson. You can go back even before LBJ to people talking about meeting these super evangelical, crazy, bred to be of service to the Holy War Lord. Not even kidding. Back in the late 50s. And Barry Goldwater is on record saying, "Oh my God, these people scare the crap out of me. That's the most scary thing I've ever seen." And Barry Goldwater was a Republican. And he was like, the people that you need to watch out for are these preacher wackadoodles trying to get into politics, and they're super organized and they are really scary. So way back then, people like Barry Goldwater had their eyeballs on this movement, okay? So I want you to understand this isn't just Trump, okay? Whether you like Trump, whether you hate Trump, whether you don't even know who Trump is, this is not just a Trump thing. This has been going on for such a long time to literally raise children it's a cult, this indoctrinated system. And certain people, women are raised to be the wives of these men that are raised to be on the school boards and lawyers and district court judges. And strategically placed. This is a jihad. This is an action taken that is long-term for a holy cause. This is a jihad. And it's been going on for a long time. So now we see it at the Supreme Court level. And, Justice Alito, who's over there quoting as an acceptable example of why Roe versus Wade is important, quoting authors and basically pastors and judges from the time of the Salem witch trials. It's really crazy stuff happening. You cannot make it up. Even Handmaid's Tale, you couldn't get this weird with it. It gets weird, but this is really weird. So all I'm saying is that what we're seeing is in the year of expansion is an expansion of an agenda that's been going for quite some time. Now, here's where it kind of sounds dire, right? Sounds super dire. We need that. Okay, no, we're going for it. Cue the cinema music. In a world once known as the United States of America, a bright shining city on the hill, now splattered in average colored poop, will this nation, no longer under God, yet a pasty-faced conglomerate of enormous asshats, sitting in power, their black robes casting a long shadow one nation under idiocy, very divisible, with liberty only for those who can afford it. Will the populations stand for the tyranny upon them? Or will they crawl off their couches, mesmerized by a mediocre Netflix haze, to emerge from beneath images of Kate and Kevin and Randall, to stand for all that is worthy? This is the time. These are the characters. In a world topsy-freak-ass-turvy, will the United States survive? Well, that was fun. Yes, the answer is yes. The United States shall survive, and yes, we will crawl out from underneath of all of this religious extremism. However, I think what I'm looking at here is we go from 2022 into 2023 and 2024. Roe versus Wade is pretty much, that's pretty much on the chopping block. Now, the person who leaked it with the hopes that the justices would feel enough pressure that they recognize that rather than asking for forgiveness, that the permission aspect of this was going to be difficult. And so the person who leaked this, when I looked into why they did it in the first place, they did it in the first place because they were worried about what this Supreme Court is doing. So this has to do with the year of expansion. And again, as we said, this, a lot of religious wackadoodles have been planted the seeds of this weirdness for a while. Here is the irony, though. The irony is it took them, 1955, okay? 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015, okay? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So basically, that's like 67 years or so of this group working to place people in positions of power in order to take over with this strange religious doctrine. And it's not that they are against liberals. Secularism is what they're against. They want everybody to be this walking lockstep authoritarian religion. It's a cult. 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 So that's what they're looking for. Now, here's where this gets hilarious. And you got to laugh, because what else are you going to do? So 60 some odd years in the planning, okay? They finally get their Supreme Court justices, and here we go. And we're in the feminine time frame, which does not favor authoritarianism in any way, shape, or form. And the way that the masses, quote, fight back in the feminine time frame is we just flat don't participate. We don't go and fight, and we don't burn down the Supreme Court building. We don't do any of that. We just ignore the new law. That's what's going to happen. There'll be a few states where people will be all fired up, and I'm going to win my $10,000 for turning in Betty Jane for getting an abortion. Look at me. I bought a new car. Yeehaw! I mean, we're going to have a few of those people out there because, well, wow, welcome to humanity. However, for the most part, people just ignore it. Gang, it's really important to remember something. That the United States only has the power it has because we, all 300 million of us, or how many ever people are in the United States of America, whatever it even is, it only works because we decide it works. Okay? It only works because we agree to the laws. The minute we're like, no, I'm not going to do that. What are they going to do? Put every single human being in America in jail? Now, of course, I'm not encouraging anyone to break the law. I'm just simply saying, think about this from a rational standpoint. So in the feminine time frame, finally, I want you to picture this cult, breeding hard, working for the babies. Wee-ha! And they're popping out these people and raising them to be on school boards and literally breeding women to be very faithful wives and breeding these men to be stalwart husbands. And it's very 1940s, 1950s, not 40s. 40s was Rosie the Riveter. Look out, bitches. We're here. Now, this is 1950s, okay? The worst of 1950s. So here you've got this 60 some odd year campaign to put people where they need to be. Now I want you to envision Dr. Evil, okay? Dr. Evil with my pinky against my mouth over here. And I have 60 some years. I'm very evil, putting my things into place. And now you're going to be subjugated by my evil rule. Except for the fact that we're not in the masculine time frame anymore, and we're in this feminine time frame, which is all about stewardship and uplifting the needs of the many and supporting those who are voiceless. And so basically this whole movement just missed its giant effing window. Are you hearing me? That's the hilarious part about it, you guys. You got to understand how much effort went in to finally get all the people and to pose as Republicans so their real face can't be seen, hidden in the dark over there, cloak and dagger in the name of the Lord Jesus, doing their stuff. And by God, it's gonna fall flatter than a fart in church is what's gonna happen. Because the feminine time frame does not support authoritarian action, which is why we saw a lot of the absolute destruction of really societal setup, not complete destruction. I mean, we didn't have a civil war, yet when former President Trump was president, and this very present, deep-seated, roiling ugliness that had been in this country since we subjugated all the native folks and took it over, since we drug all the slaves onto the shores and said, build me something, farm me. I mean, literally, this ugliness was always here, gang. We were founded on it. And then former President Trump comes in and says, hey, let's all just be who we are. If you want to be ugly, because I'm going to be ugly, because boy, do those people yell for me, and I love it. So then here comes all this bubbling tar that was there in the first place, okay? And you can't blame, Trump was just being Trump, you guys. Trump was always that guy. Trump has always been this guy. And he just came in and did his thing, and this roiling tar exploded from underneath of the United States. And so then these folks who've been hiding as Republicans, and there's a lot of Republicans who now take on this tone, this extremist tone, because they think it's going to get them votes. And I actually, weirdly, I know there's people listening to this podcast who are going to be like, F you, Danielle, you suck. Yet I actually kind of feel sorry for these very weak people in the Republican Party. And I truly do have empathy for them because I can see what's coming for them. These weak people who take on the voice of this extremist cult that they may see what it is, they may not. All they know is it gets a rise out of people, so they're trying to ride the rise, and you cannot make a deal with the devil with no consequences. It's just not the way it goes. And I'm, of course, using deal with the devil just as a saying, yet you can't get in bed with somebody who's covered in slime and not have your sheets get dirty, okay? So there's a lot of people out there who identify as Republicans who are taking on the voice of this extremist movement that they're seeing as Republicans, and those folks could care less about Republican, Democrat. They don't even want a United States government to be here, okay? They want biblical rule. They do. They want the full tilt Handmaid's Tale thing. So this is why I literally split a gut on the fact that finally their evil plan has been hatched upon the United States of America. Except it's in the wrong time frame. And we have all of our Gen Zs and millennials and Gen X and even lots of baby boomers who are like, you're freaking kidding me with that, right? We're just not doing that. I don't care if you did say it was illegal. We're not doing that anymore. And so what you're going to see is probably, for a minute there was an 80-20 split, 80% yes, Roe was going to get overturned, 20% no. And then it kind of boiled down to about a 50-50 wiggle. And I think we're still looking at them overturning it. It's about a 60-40, 70-30 split now with them overturning it. It looks like it goes to the states. And what's going to happen there is really you're going to see the whole country, Republicans and Democrats and all kinds of people mobilizing together around this bizarre thing that says women do not have a right to their own health care. And so this is not going to have the effect they want it to have. They want it to be a division tool. They want us to take up firearms towards one another. There is a reason, gang, there is a reason that a lot of the, quote, red states, and I hate that term, but you know what I mean, allowed the acquisition of firearms without background checks and did away with conceal and carry permits so any wackadoodle could have one. There's a reason. There are people that are literally waiting out there, gang, to be dog whistled into an army. And hey, why fund your army? Why buy weapons from for your army when your army could buy them for themselves? Come on, man. What are you doing? Now, it's not going to get to that because cooler minds will prevail. And the one fatal flaw in the wackadoodle Handmaid's Tale cult is that they literally have lost the capacity to think outside of their belief system. Now, this is one of the fatal flaws in the art of war. When you no longer can think like your opponent, you've lost. And these folks have gotten so drunk on their hubris, they've gotten so drunk on their power, they've gotten so drunk on their secrecy, they've gotten so high on the fact that everybody thinks they're a Republican and they're just something else that's just infiltrated wherever. And honestly, what better party to infiltrate than the really trusting God and country party? You know, you ever watch the way that the Republican Party just is one big lockstep? Sure, God, country, whatever our issues are, sure. And then you come over here to the left and we're all like fighting about, you know, what color blue we use on our posters and, oh, please don't use that pronoun. And, oh my God, I don't even like you because you didn't give me enough acknowledgement in your speech. And I mean, we are just falling apart over here on the left, just picking ourselves apart. The right's over there ignoring half of everything, walking like a big juggernaut. The left is over here intellectualizing every single nugget on the ground. And I'll tell you, if I'm going to infiltrate a party, I don't want to infiltrate the party of the hyper-scrutinizers, okay? So the left is out. I got to go to the right. I got to throw down a few buzzwords that everybody clomps onto. I got to say God, and everybody's, oh yeah, God, I like God. Okay, God's cool. And bam, I'm in, right? I mean, it's kind of, if you were to step off and not live in the United States and look at this in a history book, you'd say, wow, that was kind of creepy genius. Woo. However, I'm not saying they're geniuses. I'm saying that's the way you do it if you're trying to infiltrate. So what we've got here is a time frame that's not going to support all these years of work. And what we've got here is this action because these folks can no longer think outside of themselves. They think the law is the law because they only think like they think. They don't look at all the other ways around the law. They think, no, we own everything. The United States has been developed to this giant nation, and now we've taken what we want. And think about it, people. That's what happens if you think about it. How does conquest happen? Well, nobody takes over a country that's doing nothing and has no resources. A conquest mentality is going to take a country over that has a lot to offer, and the United States is a top dog. So we, as a country, have never really had anybody try to take us over before the 2016 election, and that actually happened with Putin. Putin's been working on this for a long time, and probably been working with these wackadoodles because there's nobody more genius in infiltration than Russia. I sincerely wish that at some point we could just get along with Russia, maybe after Putin goes and sees his angels, whatever. Maybe, because what genius that country has. And I don't mean genius in gross, awful subjugation. I mean brilliant human beings. Brilliant in psychology, brilliant in art, brilliant in literature, brilliant in science. So the whole wraparound on this is that even though we have a very weird cult trying to storm in, just like Darth Vader with their cape flowing and, ooh, look at me, I'm super scary and I'm marching and all my things. It may seem like the evil empire has dominion right now, gang, but the feminine time frame is actually the resistance, okay? And just by the lack of our participation with this craziness, they're not going to get the war they want. Change will come back. Balanced change where choice returns, choice to own whatever gun you want, choice to do what you want with your body. You know, we're going to keep the choices on the table here. And that's something that they're not expecting. And it really has to do with the fact that we don't war against anybody. Yeah, there's protests and there's movements and all the things. Yet this Roe versus Wade deal does not help the Conservative Party at the midterms at all. So really, instead of people seeing it as a big, ooh, look at, you know, we've got Dominion, yay, here we go into the midterms. And like I said in 2021, going into 2022, that there were going to be a lot of people unhappy about the way the midterms were going to come out. You know, it's supposed to be this big red wave. There's going to be a lot of people unhappy about that. It's a pretty balanced wash, actually. So it's, you know, there's some people who are going to be super disappointed, some people who are going to think that they're going to be disappointed one way or the other. Yet it's going to affect the midterm election. It's not going to be just this big conservative sweep because of the extremism in this particular party that's masquerading as the GOP. And so it's going to affect those who actually are part of the GOP. And actually, there's going to be a fracture in the Republican Party. And I talked about this in previous podcasts, and that's coming up here into 2023. And you've got the Mitt Romneys, and you've got the Liz Cheneys, for God's sakes, who I laugh about this as a Montanan. Everybody knows that the Cheneys are just this huge dynasty down in Wyoming. And of course, Liz Cheney and I, if we were to sit down and have a beer, we'd probably get along super well together down in Sheridan. However, you know, we would disagree on certain aspects of policy, obviously. However, Liz Cheney at least is down there going, this is insane. This extremism is nuts. Please get out of my party. Y'all are crazy. You know, I just don't want to be overtaxed. Come on, man. So it's crazy when folks like Liz Cheney, who at one time as an LGBTQ person, I'd be like, ooh, boo, Liz Cheney, boo. You're mean to your gay sister. Boo, Liz Cheney. You know, obviously she's done some growing as a person, having a gay family member. However, it's just so weird where we're at now, you know, because you've got the Darth Vader theme on one side, and then you've got Liz Cheney on the other side, and you've got the rest of the United States just going, oh, man. So 2022 into 2023, gang, is going to be about striking balance, okay? The year of expansion is taking off, and all the extremes are expanding, but so is the temperance. The temperance is also expanding. So give the temperance room inside of yourself to expand and to become something greater than you thought was possible. This is really important. Let that expand. Let it be what it's trying to be. That's going to be something that's going to be very, very edifying. If you're somebody who just wants to seek balance, who wants to help those who are voiceless. And this isn't, you know, it doesn't matter pro-abortion, against abortion, blah. This is about control, because there's no other safe group to say you advocate for as the unborn. Think about it. The unborn don't have opinions. They don't vote. They can't say they want your help or don't want your help. What a safe group of people to say you stand up for. Yet once they're born, you know, who cares? Blah, you're on welfare. Get out of here, kid. So it's a tactic. It's a control tactic. It's a demoralization tactic. So just understand, don't be demoralized. It's part of the evil empire thing, which is so strange, and it's not going to have any teeth, and it doesn't end up sticking in the feminine time frame. 60 plus years of planning and theme songs to end up like a wily coyote wilting in the sunshine trying to chase the roadrunner. You know? That's literally what it's going to be. So that's a major, major, major wide brushstrokes over what's going on in the country. And yeah, we are going to see some more weird legislation. We are going to see a lot more weird religious pushes. We're going to have some surprising overturns in seats, with some seats going to some really radical far-right people, and some seats overthrowing the folks who are on the right in those current seats and going to folks that are on the left, because this action by the Supreme Court has really kind of brought people's attention to the fact that there is this rogue party wandering invisibly through the GOP, doing all this weird stuff that really has nothing to do with the country's best interests. or really even constitutional measures. It's a little crazy. So we're going to see some fireworks fly and just kind of be cool. And what you can do during this time frame is understand that during the year of expansion is have temperance, gang. Have temperance. Just be temperate. Find the place in the middle, the balance point in yourself, and bring that middle forward. I'm not saying be wishy-washy. I'm not saying don't be yourself. I'm not saying don't have your opinions. If you're a far left person or a far right person, I'm not saying don't be you. I'm simply saying find the spot inside of you where there is balance. Because this time frame favors balance. And so this imbalance that we see in media, this imbalance we see in politics, this imbalance we see in extremism, all of that is going to hit the wall of the feminine time frame. And yes, we have some heavy lifting to do at the end of 2022. However, we're in an exciting time, gang. We are in a big change period right now. Huge change period. Huge. So just understand that you have an opportunity here to really make a difference in your communities by not, sure, let your voice be heard, yet understand fight, it's more like we just walk away. Like, how can somebody control you if you just don't, if you're like, I don't even, whatever, I'm not even, I'm out. We are going to have some legal battles and all kinds of things. Yet understand that this is way bigger than government. This is about consciousness of each one of us. And it's about coming out of polarized sections. And I have been referring to this invisible group in the GOP that's infiltrated it as a bunch of wackadoodles. And that's probably not very nice. That's just what I kind of think of anybody who wants to subjugate other people and make them into what they want them to be. I may see the world through a little bit more of a left-leaning lens, but there's no way that I want everybody to see the world like me. I want you to see the world like you. And I appreciate some really great discussions that I have with my God and country conservative friends. We have great discussions about how the country could be more healthy. And if we get off the bumper sticker bullet points and talk about the substantive issues, we're often agreeing on the issues that are wrong. It's just we divide off into vernacular, into just real strange little points of extremism on either side. And that's what this invisible, infiltrating Darth Vader party is relying on. They're relying on us to continue to divide. So obviously we have to stand up for that which we do not agree with, obviously. Yeah, let's do so peacefully. And let's remember that if we really believe we're infiltrated by Darth Vader, that too is going to be a modality that spreads. And this is going to fall flat. So get out there, gang. If you got your $5, it's a good time to throw it at some crypto right now, because boy, is that going to go up like a crazy thing. But we'll talk more about that on another podcast. Gang, thank you very much. I am way over time on this podcast, but that was the best I could do to get it all in an hour-ish. So thank you very much, gang. Thanks for bearing with me through my stuffy nose. And I will see you next podcast.